states that they are descended from settlers from the Congo. This has been proven to be largely accurate. However, modern historians suggest that they began in the Niger Delta and spread to Southeast Africa via the Congo. Evidence for this is primarily linguistic, with similarities across Niger, Congo, Southeast Africa, and Angola. These migrations are estimated to have occurred between 1000 BC and 500 AD, occurring in many separate waves. The expansion of the Bantu eliminated or evicted the native Khoisan, who were nomadic herdsmen and hunter-gatherers, unlike the Bantu who had developed agriculturalism by this period. Today there are approximately 350 million Bantu throughout Africa, despite their no longer being present in their original homeland of Niger. After settling in Southeast Africa, the Zulu grew to occupy the territory from the Tugela River to the Pongola River. The Zulu would also go a transformation into a regional power under the leadership of Shaka Zulu. Shaka became leader of the Zulu after some dynastic struggles, and swiftly reorganized the military and centralized power in himself. Shaka had been born illegitimate and was exiled by his father. After being exiled, Shaka took up refuge with the leader of the Methua Empire, Ding Sangweo, and he helped Shaka to elevate him to the leadership of the Zulu upon his father's death, making him a sort of client king of his own. Dingiswayo was killed in 1818 by Zwide, the leader of the Ndwande, and Shaka then assumed control of the Methua alliance. Shaka was a strong man, and he brought the witch doctors and shaman under his control, giving him power of the spiritual aspects of the Zulu. Shaka also revamped the military, shortening the spears so they could be used like swords for thrusting in close quarters, rather than the longer throwing spears used by contemporary tribes. This changed the game of warfare in the region. Suddenly battles were shorter, more deadly, and could take place much faster. These reforms were well needed, as Shaka was almost immediately at war with the Ndwandwe. They met at the Battle of Gopli Hill, with 5,000 Zulus met 12,000 Ndwandwe. The Zulus held the hill, but the Ndwandwe were confident in their superior numbers. They wanted to surround the hill and dispatch the smaller force. Shaka knew this, and so he took 700 men and a fraction of his cattle, and made a display around 10 kilometers south of the hill. Seeing this, the Ndwandwe leader sent 4,000 men to catch what he thought was half of the Zulu army, and also catch the cattle, which represented wealth in Zulu society. The rest of the Ndwandwe surrounded the hill. However, as they advanced up, their formations began to cramp each other. This made it much harder for them to throw their spears effectively. The Zulus, seeing the massed ranks of the Ndwandwe, charged their enemies from the top of the hill, routing them to the bottom before they took back their positions at the top of the hill. After several waves of attacks, the Ndwandwe began to lose troops, not just to the spears of the Zulu, but to thirst, as they began to walk towards the river around 2 kilometers away to fill up on water. Shaka was prepared for this and had stockpiled much water beforehand. By the late afternoon, Shaka was aware that the 4,000 Ndwandwe that had chased his decoy force would begin to return, and he knew that he had limited time to destroy the main force before they came back. However, his troops had seen much fighting, and many of his ranks were thinning, and the Ndwandwe could sense the blood in the water and see Shaka's thinning ranks on top of the hill. And unaware of their stockpiles of water, they assumed that the Zulu would be tired, thirsty, and hungry, such as their own troops. So the Ndwandwe sent 1,500 of their best warriors up the hill to engage a force of around 500 Zulu on the top of the south side of the hill. Just as the Ndwandwe closed in, Shaka deployed his trap. He had been hiding 2 of his elite regiments in a depression at the top of the hill. These men now came round and enveloped the Ndwandwe column, crushing them. This became the Zulu's signature maneuver, known as the Horns of the Beast. Seizing this moment of advantage on his demoralized opponent, Shaka ordered the general attack, breaking the formations around the hill and forcing the rest into retreat. Shaka had beaten back a much larger force, killed many, including many of Zwide's sons, as well as 7,500 others. However, he had not destroyed the Ndwandwe, and he had lost 2,000 of his own men and lost many of his cattle, and therefore his wealth. As was custom, neither side took any prisoners. Shaka knew a second invasion was coming, and used his success to gather allies who also wanted to settle scores with Zwide. Sure enough, Zwide invaded again in 1820. Shaka met Zwide at the Mathutse River and waited until half the army had crossed the river and then engaged them, destroying them in separate groups. This battle broke the Ndwande and forced their population to flee into neighbouring territories, starting a chain reaction known as the Mefekane, or crushing. As tribes fought each other for new lands, resulting in the deaths of between 1 and 2 million people. Shaka ruled rather effectively for the next 7 years. However, when his mother died, he is supposed to have gone rather insane. He ordered for no crops to be planted for the next year, no milk, which was a dietary staple for the Zulu, could be consumed, and any woman who became pregnant would be killed along with her husband. He sentenced to death 7,000 people who weren't supposedly sad enough at the death of his mummy. Even cows were killed so that their calves would feel the pain of losing a mother. Rather unsurprisingly, it was not long until Shaka was assassinated. He had sent the bulk of his army on a raid north, and the opportunity was seized upon by his half-brothers, one of whom, Dingame, was later made king and would clash with the Boer. To find out more about the history of the Zulu, please join me for part 2.